Cats. It's a film I've seen now, and I plan to go back now that they've enhanced the visual effects because that's an issue. And I know that there are aspects of this film that are so strange to people that they can't even understand what they're really looking at. And I would like to explain a way that you might think about this film and that you might actually use as a guide when you go to watch it. And this is also a way to enjoy it. Let's start at the beginning with the play itself, which I saw as a kid and was one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen in my life. For sure, up to that point, I'd never seen anything quite like it. Here's what I saw. When they began, they start by walking down the aisle, and I'd never seen a show where the performers would enter the audience space in that way, and they were coming down the aisle, and their eyes were glowing, and the music began. And that music begins, and you're totally in a trance all of a sudden, and then they come, and the ensemble comes out. And the musical of Cats is much more of an ensemble piece than the movie appears to be, though the best parts of the film have to do with that cat ensemble, those young, beautiful dancers. They are magnificent. I looked up at the stage, and these people arrive in the cat outfits, which I will also begin by saying, as a kid, I found very sexy and very provocative. And as an adult, still do, still feeling that. They move in a very, very slinky and exciting way. And apparently the original cast, all casts of Cats, and this was a touring production I saw in Detroit, they were all told to get a cat and stay at home and watch it and use it as your character study. And isn't that fascinating? Isn't that an interesting project for an actor, singer, performer, dancer type? They move in a way that is completely unique. I believe it's its own kind of style of dancing, even though it incorporates a lot of popular dancing and ballet. But the slinky way in which they move is also lends a kind of like wonderful androgyny to the whole thing. And that is one aspect of it, that these cats are, since they're not human, they move in a way that is very freeing, and they all seem to be completely freed up to do what cats do. And their movements and all that stuff is weird, and it's off-putting, but it's also, in context, it's the only way to go. The movie begins with a very, very sad image, which is our lead actress and lead performer, Francesca Hayward. It's gorgeous and wonderful, and we see the whole film through her eyes, and she's the most dynamic, beautiful performer who can dance and she can sing, and she just looks, the way she looks at other characters is actually the way that we're supposed to see the film, is through her eyes, I believe. They've given this film much more of a point of view than what the show gave us, which is, the show really gives you a pretty broad view on cats who are in a, the Cats set was so amazing. They're in a junkyard or something like that. And as a kid, during intermission, after the very strange Act 1, and the first act of the film is also very strange. If you look back at the original, that's what you get. You're seeing all these different cats being introduced, and each one of them vying for the position of being chosen by old Deuteronomy to go off to the Heaviside Layer, which is supposedly cat heaven. And each one is showing their skills and what's great about them and what their charm and all these things, beginning with Rebel Wilson playing the Gumby cat. We would all want to kind of, everybody said before, wouldn't it be great if you could just lounge around all day? And when you look at cats and dogs, you say, wouldn't it be great to be them? Wouldn't it be great to just lay around in a sunbeam all day? Wouldn't that be cool? But we also see that it's gross, that it's problematic. There is an unexpected march of cockroaches in there, and they have little top hats and canes, and they do a little thing. I didn't expect that, and I thought that was so strange. James Corden appears, and he has also been padded, and he's a big, sort of fat, super hungry dandy. He's a little bit of an Elton John type. He has this, he has his spats, and he has the top hat, and some cats are naked, And then these others have clothes, and they have little props and things like that. And that's a weird thing that they don't really explain, because a lot of times you look at this ensemble, who's going to stick out? It's the one who's wearing a top hat. He shows the central desire of all these creatures, which is food. Lots of it. Endless food. And also, but food stands in for another thing here. Because imagine what's going on here. All these cats are on the streets, and their life is in the streets, and they are presumably homeless, many of them. And we know that some of them have no owners, and some of them had an owner at some point. Some are wearing a collar, some do not. Some have sneakers, some do not. And each of those pieces tells, the backstory of that individual cat. And that's a thing that might seem odd and jarring. But again, we have to take this, you have to go in with your eyes open. They are street kids. They're young, sexy, ravenous addicts. And their drug is food. But it's not food that we're talking about. When Ian McKellen goes down and sticks his face into a bowl of milk, that's where the metaphor really, really comes clear, because that's not a bowl of milk, man, that's Coke. Later on, once the cats all arrive at the Jellicle Ball, which is like the big party house, big crack house, or whatever it is, they're drugged. They're given catnip by Taylor Swift, which is a metaphor in itself. They are all laid flat, like they've just been injected. And they're all powerless to do anything, as McCavity, played by Idris Elba, is he's using them all so that he can get the preferred spot and he can be chosen on, because he wants out of the life. And that's what the Heaviside Layer is. It's a way out of the life. And it all comes together when Judi Dench arrives, and there she is as Old Deuteronomy, which was originally played by a man, I believe, with a deep bass voice. And we don't have to define any of these cats by gender, because they're all kind of, in a way, genderless, and that's part of what's wonderful. And I also think that's one of the original appeals of the show, is the sexuality is so fluid and so provocative and right out there. And there's no limits on where it could go, because you're a cat and you're free. And that was appealing to me as a kid. And I think that's been appealing to audiences for years. Because why is it that there's this movie that is tanking at the box office, yet is the longest running musical play, one of the longest running in history? Why is that? It's because it appeals to the sensibilities within us all, that each one of us might be one of those individuals who longs for a different life. And each one of these cats, even though some of them are living a great life, they want a different life. If we take it that these are all teenage runaways or something, and that they're all kind of looking for a fix, and they finally get Taylor Swift taps some catnip on them, and they are out. And then Idris Elba is revealed to be kind of a pimp character who is using Taylor Swift in a plot to steal that position. And then comes Jennifer Hudson as Grisabella, who is the realest character in the entire thing, because she's the one who actually shows what life is doing to her. She's not being anybody else but who she is. She comes on and sings Memory. And she's not only singing about memories that she has had, she's also talking about who's going to remember us when we are gone. And that's very, very powerful. And I remember seeing the show and, listening. Of course, no matter how young or old you are, you can't help but be knocked out by the power of that song. I think it's a great tune. And I looked over and my mother was crying. For about, a while after that, we would play the Cats soundtrack around the house all the time. We'd wear out that cassette tape playing it, and Memory in particular, my mother would be found sitting and listening to it and just reliving it. It was powerful to her. And one time my grandmother had come to visit. My grandmother, who had come all the way from Australia and who'd been through everything in her life, every incredible thing and terrible thing, and here she was with us. And we decided to play it for her, and she sat and she cried. We looked over and she was crying in stillness and silence, not from just the power of the piece, but from the memories. And so when Jennifer Hudson sings this in such a raw and immediate kind of way, and sings it and says, "Touch me," and nobody had touched her in so long. Nobody had gone near her. And the cats have a way of showing love. They don't kiss on the lips. They just rub cheeks together. And it's very, very beautiful and very touching and very, very, very meaningful. And old Deuteronomy is returned, spoiler. And Deuteronomy is kind of like the Aslan of Narnia, or she is a bit like the God character. She's a little bit beyond this realm. She's not living in the physical world. So she and Jennifer Hudson connect, and seeing Judi Dench and Jennifer Hudson together is so transcendent and magical. And she chooses her because she deserves it the most, and because love is the answer to the problem here. Love is the answer to life. And that's why Cats actually contains the meaning of life, is that in those moments of transcendence, we live for those moments that are a little beyond our own lives. And so for Grisabella now to mount the basket, sort of a hot air balloon, and that's much like the original production too, that Grizz would get into a sort of a basket and be lifted up into the heaviside layer, whatever that is, because it's not exactly heaven. Everybody wants to get there, but what I think it is just the way out of the life. It's the way out of that place, and nobody deserves it more than her. And someday, I feel like we'll see each other all there. That's the idea that they're getting across. Now, people who don't like cats, I call meow-therfuckers. Meow-therfuckers, get it? And they've probably hated on it, and they were going in to hate it, but if you try and hate watch this film, it's not a very enjoyable experience. You won't be able to sit there and do that the way you might with some film that's so extraordinarily bad, or some film that's bad on purpose and has kind of a wink to the audience, and you go in sort of expecting to, it's cheesy or something like that. Musicals are hard to do on film. And the same reaction that people are having to this movie, they probably had to The Greatest Showman or Moulin Rouge, because it's just odd to see, it's weird in a play to see somebody just stop and just bust out singing. But it's even stranger in a film because all that theatrical energy is just so much. We're so unaccustomed to seeing that in film, but it can be really, really fantastic. It can be some of the best moments ever. Some actors are able to pull it off, such as in the past it was Gene Kelly and Doris Day, and now we tend to put on movie stars in these roles, and what we can't get away from Taylor Swift's identity. We can't get away from Rebel Wilson. We can't get away from Jennifer Hudson or the actual identity of these people. That is actually a musical theater thing as well, because when you see Bernadette Peters or Bette Midler perform, no matter what character they're in, their own personality still comes through. So that's the thing that's odd and it's unusual, because we have a very kind of we have a desire for realism. We have a desire for something straightforward and kind of brutally real and honest. I think that we really, really long for that nowadays in film. We're looking for that. We're not looking for artifice. We're not looking for style. And that's where it's like two things that are rubbing up against each other and not quite threading. So the reason that a lot of people can't feel like they know what they're even looking at with this film is because this is something we're so unaccustomed to seeing that it boggles your mind and it doesn't feel right. But if you go with it, and this is what I'm telling people, just go in with your eyes open, man. Don't judge this movie until you've seen it. Really, really, seriously. The opening is going to be very showy and a little bit dizzying, in fact, just so it's so busy and it's so wild and trippy and bizarre. And then Judi Dench arrives. And at that point, everything clicks. Everything comes together. The cat ensemble starts to move together and follow after her. And those are some of the best images. And if you watch it with that in mind, you'll come away with an experience that is deeply profound, deeply moving. And in a film, and especially because there's CGI that's been done on every single head and all these things, and so you've got two things that are not matching up together. You've got the kind of brutal intensity of musical performance, and then you've also got this CGI thing, and you can definitely see the seams between, not these things. The effects are, they're what they are. They're unusual, but I think they're pretty well done. The hairs move, and there's texture to it, and it's pretty tight. But yet, Every time you see CGI, you can see the seams. You can see where things don't match up, and you can tell you're not in a very real world. And I really do recommend that people go back and they see that original, that TV recording that was on PBS. It's sexy, it's beautiful, it's really, really special, and it's much of that original cast is there, and they are something else, man. And here was the last parting thought I would leave you with, is when I first saw the show when I was 9 or something, we got invited on stage during intermission to go and get our program signed by the cast. And it was, the guy playing Gus, the theater cat, was up there, and he was very scary to me. I mean, he was just but his costume was super detailed. And I saw him and I was like dreading actually going up to him because he was just so much. And so of another world, of another experience. It was bizarre. And I go up and I have my little program in my hand and I'm walking up with my mom, and then I took my first step up the stairs and I realized, I looked down and I saw that the step below me was a big, gigantic cereal box. And that the steps were cereal boxes, and that everything, all the details on this set were phenomenal because it's all this scale. It's been blown up out of scale, and it's such an amazing thing to see. That is the world that I wanted to be a part of. I knew at that moment this is what I wanted to do in some way or another. I actually dreamt of joining the Cats company as a young kid, but it's easier said than done. But loving the theater and its ability to transform. Film comes at you. Theater you have to kind of lean into a little bit more and join into. Theater joins with you. No matter what it is, you're in the room with those people. So the distance that people are putting themselves at from art often is preventing them from enjoying it. And so there are a lot of people who are looking at this, and it's the same thing with like Star Wars comes out, and the fans balk at it and they say that's not it. And they get really upset with it, and I'm like not a huge, I'm enough of a fan. Same thing with Game of Thrones. I'm like, I dig it, I've seen it, but I wasn't like heavy into it, I wasn't heavily invested like some people. And it's really funny because people are like, man, it's not like the book, and it's not the same. And then I say, well, okay, but I don't know that, and I'm enjoying myself. All I would say to you is if you are curious, go and satisfy that curiosity. Go and see Cats. Go and see it with the enhanced effects. See it at home. See it in one way or another. And I promise you that if you stick with it, you're going to see these things. And this is what's powerful about the original, and it's what's powerful about this one. You're going to hear some great music. I think the last 3 numbers are especially gorgeous. Mr. Mustafali's Memory, and then the Journey to the Heaviside Layer. Whew. Gorgeous, gorgeous, beautifully done. I wouldn't have changed a thing. I thought they were transcendently beautiful, all 3 of those. And you'll see someone like Jennifer Hudson perform and she's so raw and so real through the makeup and through everything and through the effects and all this stuff. Her nose is running really, really badly. That's how real it is. Her nose is just gushing. I don't know why somebody didn't step in or digitally remove that. I'm not sure, maybe, but leave it, man, leave it. And you'll see genuine love and care and compassion. And it's not corny. Since when did those things ever become corny? In musical theater, there's no way to sing some of these songs and bullshit your way through them. You have to be authentic, no matter if you're wearing a cat suit or not. And that authentic thing that's at the center of Cats through all this crazy artifice, because every single shot is composited together. There's not a single straight through the camera shot, I'm sure, or very few. But through all that artifice, there's something extraordinarily true that's at the end of it, and that is we must lift each other up. If we have any hope of getting on to a better life, or another life, or the life we should be living, we can't do that through spite. We can't do it through cheating somebody else. We have to lift one another up through love and compassion. And that's what I take away from this whole thing. And if you can go in and use these metaphors a little bit, you may enjoy yourself. You might have a transcendent experience that you'll never forget. And so there are a few of us out there who are not afraid to admit that we love Cats.